Well, very friendly hellos. Welcome to the first Notary Governance call of December 5th, 2023. Here's what's on the agenda for this call. First, high-level program updates. There was a lot of discussion about the recent bugs that were filed, so I'm going to walk you through essentially what bugs were closed, what was the root cause of those issues, and if you were impacted, any next steps that are needed on your behalf. Second, we'll take a look at the AC bot. It's now live. Show you how it triggers, why it triggers, and what are the thresholds that make an AC bot review an application, and what you could do next once it comes over the application. Then we'll talk about the allocator applications. That part is mostly a review. The goal of this is that we're keeping this in the front of your radar, so in case there's questions or newcomers, it's a quick way to kind of dial in and get a sense of what's going on. So if you're curious about the allocator process, lots of time to discuss. This call may be a little bit short because a lot of this information is review, so we'll have lots of time if there's any other issues that you wanted to see on the call. As a reminder, this call taking place right now is the second to last call of 2023. The next call will take place on December 19th, and that is the last call for 2023, and the schedule will pick back up in 2024. If you're on this call, thank you. Appreciate your time. Right now, I'm getting this Airtable form and I'm putting it in chat. This goes a long way. Not only does it show that you're here in the program with us, but if you apply later, it's a great way to show that you've been in the program for a while, and also leave feedback or comments. So if there's anything impacting you, you could leave it right here, and this is an easy way for myself or the governance team to triage this and get you whatever you need. So thanks for being here. There's a sign-in sheet for you. If there's any items that you want to see on the future call, as always, I'll post this issue in GitHub. Just leave a comment. Hey, Kev, I hope we can talk about the bots. Or, hey, Kev, I hope we can go over XYZ question. I'll bake it into the agenda. So I'll always post these 2 weeks before the next call. If you need support for any reason, you have a very friendly governance team here to back you up. If you're not sure who to loop in for your question, as always, feel free to tag me, Kevin-Foundation, and I can help route you to the best point of contact to get you what you need. All right, with that, let's take a look. So the bug report, big thanks and big note of patience on this one. So essentially what was going on is there were many simultaneous bugs that came in all around the October timeline, and they all revolved around two critical issues. And the main one of those two was that when the bot would run after an application had completed it, it wasn't triggering. So this was a really deep-rooted problem. So essentially back in October and November, Simon was working with the dev teams to identify that, and we thought we had this solution put in place. As soon as that solution was put in place, it didn't solve the root problems. So as they were addressing this, a lot of those issues just were left open as they went to look for it. So going forward, we'll make sure that if we don't see an update on that, either myself or another member of the governance team will at least leave a comment in those issues like, hey, we're still working this on the back end. That way you kind of have a sense of what's going on. And we also keep a tracker, I check this quite regularly, of what the issues are and what their status is, so that way if you ask me, I could route you to the best point of contact or get that for you to save you time going forward. So here are the two bugs with the trigger bot that was going on. So if you were impacted, talking to you directly. The first was the data cap didn't trigger. So one of the reasons for this is that if you use the same address in multiple applications, when the bot runs through those applications, it can't differentiate between those addresses. So there was a few applications that were open where the data cap wasn't triggered, and it was due to the same address being used. So if you saw yours fall in this category, you might have seen your bug report closed. And what it's asking for in the future or to reopen is making sure that we use a different address for each application. If you have any questions or if this is a blocker, please feel free to tag me or loop into that issue, and we'll be sure to help you as you go forward. The second bug was strictly a bug. So what was going on is in the API calls that would go over these applications, there was a text that was left over from the DBOM integration, and when that API call went out, it would break with the verifier. So this required two dev teams to kind of coordinate amongst themselves, figure out where that root cause was, and that should have been addressed. So all of these were closed out over the weekend. If you still have issues, if you still have a problem, again, please let me know. And just a big thank you. I realize that bugs can be frustrating. And then from a development standpoint, it is hard to couple triaging engineering resources against this bug or against a rollout to JSON. So again, thanks for bubbling this up, letting us know this was a concern. This should be good to go. If not, please let me know. AC bot. So Phil posted a comment in the public channel on Phil Plus, and essentially just saying, hey, this went live. So essentially what this bot is doing is it's reviewing each application that's submitted for data cap, and then it's checking it against thresholds of compliance. And those compliances are what you can see on this shared screen now. These are metrics like, does this meet the CID check? What percentage of actual SPs are in the client list? Was there a KYC check done? And all of these fields are then totaled, compiled, and then put into the application, which means if an application is submitted and it doesn't meet those thresholds for the AC bot will review, leave a comment, and close if necessary. So if you look at an application, some have been closed out due to not meeting the thresholds for the compliance. If this is yours, what it will do is it will leave a very specific comment in that application. So this screenshot that I have right now is showing, hey, this client is not meeting XYZ rules. In this case, it was percentage of data cap stored with the top provider. So the threshold is 75. So what this is going to do is it's going to leave you a comment on like, hey, I need to go back to this application. I need to go back to this storage and modify to be in compliance with the program. This program will tighten over time. So by design, when Phil set this up, it was made very loose. And the goal of this one is, in case there are some modifications, we didn't just want to crank this out, pump the brakes, and then cause any blocks. So you may see that you'll get this trigger allowance. It gives you time. But over the next weeks, probably until the end of January, over the course of 8 weeks, this will tighten to the threshold standards that I showed before on this slide. So by week 7 and 8, the CID checker score should be reaching that 95% compliance. So again, this is meant to slowly ramp up to give you time to modify as necessary to make sure that we are in the compliance for the program. If you have any questions on this, feel free to leave it either in the public Slack, you can tag myself and Phil, or just message me directly and I'll help run down what you may be looking for. But as a reminder, this AC bot is now live, and this will be one of the automated ways that all data caps go out. And if an application is found to not be in compliance, what this will do is this will trigger it for that data cap removal process that was put into place. So before I go on, I'd just like to pause and see if anybody has questions about the recent bugs and any status, or any questions about how the AC bot is operating. The floor is yours. All right. If anything comes up, we should have lots of time at the end of the call, or feel free to shoot a hand up at any point and we'll get back. Allocators. This part of the conversation should be a review, and this is just essentially making sure that there are as much information about this as we go forward to make sure that you have what you need. So to apply as an allocator, essentially what you do is you go to GitHub, and in the main Filecoin Plus repository, you'll see there's a new issue. And when you click that, you'll then open up how to submit. When you submit an application for the allocator, it's a big application. So pre-apologies on the paperwork, on what's required. I think the goal of so many questions on this one is to be very upfront in like what the data cap is purpose use driven. So essentially the goal of the Filecoin Plus is to onboard not sensitive, but critical information, data helpful that's like relevant to it. So this is a great way to kind of demonstrate, like, I understand what the data is. I understand how to do the verification. I understand how to do this business model. And I'm agreeing to these standards as we go forward. It's a lot of questions. So the way that it was set up is when you fill these allocator questions out, if you submit them directly in Airtable, it doesn't save. So you'll see inside of that GitHub application, there's 3 parts. So part number 1 is you just leave your name. Like, hey, I'm making this new issue. My name's Kevin. I'm with the foundation. Here's just 7 real basic application questions. And then that gets it on file. Then what you'll see is that there is this Google Doc. If you go into the Google Doc, there's all those questions to fill out. It's designed to allow you to take your time, really take a look at it, and then prepare your answers. Once you've collected that information and prepared it, you submit it with Airtable. The reason why you take these additional steps is what Airtable allows is we can collect all that information, have this repository for compliance. On the back end, there's a lot of sanction checks that go into this. There's a lot of disclosure verifications that go into this. And in elections in the past, those of you that have been notaries for a while, you were probably just bombarded with comms from me back and forth. Hey, what's your organization name? What's your email? Can you verify this address? One of the goals in this application is just one and done. So rather than having 3 different forms, sanctions, disclosures, applications, it's all baked in to this one application. So again, thanks for the patience in filling this out. I do realize that paperwork does come with this, and I think that sometimes there's just a necessary evil when you get into this kind of stage. But thanks again. If you have any questions on the application as you're filling it out, again, feel free to tag me and I could happily answer or route you to where you need to go. Checking on the timelines, because this will be critical. So right now the applications are open. What we're doing is that people are filling those out in GitHub and turning them in. I'm still working on finalizing the integration, which is taking all of the data that gets filled out in Airtable, sanitize out all the PII, like full names, full emails, anything that's sensitive of that nature, and then repost it back to GitHub. And the reason it will be reposted back to GitHub is that way the community can look, provide feedback and input, and really kind of cross-check this. So it's more of a community effort and not just a singular body that looks at these. So that'll be happening in the next couple of days. And this gives you plenty of time to say like, okay, hey, my application meets these requirements. It's a little like here. And then Galen's finishing up a scoring rubric. Will actually allow you to compare how you're ranking to others. So with this period will be open until January 20th. One of the things I'd also point on in this schedule is that in the States, we're going to be celebrating the holiday break. That starts out on the 23rd, which means comms are really going to slow down from like December 23rd till probably around January 8th. So if you have a big issue or if you have a big question, I highly recommend you try to get that into us before that holiday break. What I don't want to do is present a blocker where there's a lot of questions on the 8th, and then we're scrambling to get you that before that deadline. So again, if you have any issues, please let us know. Take a look at this application early, and it will pay off for you as you take a look going forward. I posted these questions on the last governance call, but I still got a few DMs. So I'm just going to reshare them one more time. And here were the big ones that I've heard. Hey, Kev, I was a notary in the 4th round. Do I have to reapply in this allocator round if I want to receive or retain my data cap? The answer is yes. The second is, hey, I turned my application in. I get a lot of community feedback. Can I modify? Do I have to modify? The answer is it's up to you. So think about this as like an ongoing application, just as you would put something in. So if one of your areas doesn't address a certain topic, you will see that in the comments. Like, hey, we don't see a lot of like how you're going to be storing this or what your plan for bookkeeping is. So this gives you a chance to go back and leave that additional information. It's also a reason why we recommend you turn your application in well before the 20th. If you wait until that last January 20th and turn it in, it's essentially the final. There's no way to kind of go back and provide input or help you modify that application. So again, getting your application in early allows a lot of time for input and feedback to make it the strongest application possible. And then last, if you have any questions, as always, continue to do so. Reach out to me and I'll help route you. I sent pings yesterday to around every notary that was in the system right now, just as a friendly check-in, like, hey, making sure that you're aware of this and you have the link. So if you check your Slack and your existing notary, you'll see a comment from me in our private channel just saying, hey, is there anything I can do to help? And that continues to hold true. What's also nice is that once you start your application, you can leave a comment in it. Hey, Kevin, I have a question about this, and I'll write back to it. So it makes it really effective as we go forward on that. So those were the updates as far as the allocator. It's essentially the timelines. Get that in as quickly as possible. January 20th is the final deadline. Making sure that you understand how the application is submitted. You go to GitHub, you receive the Google form, you fill it out and turn it into Airtable, then it all pipes back. So with that, I'll pause and see if anybody has any questions or like to discuss anything on the Allocator application. Or Eric, floor is yours.
Hi, Kevin. Actually, we are preparing all the questionnaires for the allocator. But during last conference call, I was asked Galen for the metric for the allocator. Have you figured out? So we are expecting to measure it by ourselves first before our submission.
Eric, yeah, great question. I think that scoring rubric is still in development. After this call, I will follow up with Galen and I'll post a thread in the Phil Plus channel as far as like what the status and when to expect it. Thanks for that.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Of
course. Thank you for that. Julian, I see your question in chat. Where's the link for office hours? That's such a good question too. We went back and forth on what the best way to sign up for office hours is and really look at like, what is the point of an office hour? Is it to kind of go over the questions? it was a high lift to sync calendars over the course. I think what I might do is follow up with Galen and maybe put together like technical office hours, application office hours, and scoring office hours, and you could sign up for it. That way it's more specific. My worry with the office hours is, say you ask for office hours with like myself, I get on the call and a lot of the questions are related to like intricate KYC procedures. Well, KZ has crossed that bridge with Enterprise Fill Plus. So I think the next step for us is figuring out how we can have you sign up for like, what's your question and what's your area? That way we don't match you with like maybe an engineer that doesn't know about the KYC when actually what you need is Kevin Z on the call. So what I'll do is I'll follow up with the team. I might break it into a few categories and I'll get some time blocks that we could set aside and I'll accommodate different geographic regions. That way no one's having to wake up too late or too early to meet. I'll take action on that one and I'll see if I can get you a result by end of week. That way we don't block you on that. Thanks for that call about office hours, Shirley.
Hi, my name is Kenneth, and I do have a question. So I generally would understand the allocators model, and the reasons are stated very clearly on the GitHub issue on allowing more businesses to be benefiting from this allocators model on different uh, business pathways. But is there some sort of preferred direction that Filecoin is looking at?
Kenneth, I don't think I fully understand the root of your question. Could you maybe
Okay.
word that a little bit so I give you the best answer?
Okay, for example, there could be applications on the manual process, the automated process, and market, open market businesses. So I was wondering if there's any preferences for that the Filecoin is taking into.
Ah, I see. Okay, so if I'm hearing the question correctly, in the allocator application, you can break into three categories of how you want to be that allocator of data. You know, like you're going to be creating a system that does it, or you're going to have like a market-based approach. If I'm hearing your question, is there a preferred methodology? And the answer is no. But I will say when you submit that, there will be different answers that best support it. And what I mean by that is if you were creating tooling and your whole business plan is like, I'm going to create the tooling, the application should really highlight and focus on how that tooling will run to make that allocation. And that will have more of a technical background to your application. Versus if you're market based, it will be like, how is this deal making process happening? How are you soliciting these clients and how are you working with them? So it will be more of a bookkeeping and compliance application as it goes forward. You'll see in the questions that some of them are very specifically written to kind of tease that out. But depending on what plan that you want to put in place, if there was any questions you had for it, feel free to tag me. And then I'll also make sure that I can help you. If you wanted to walk through it line by line, I'd be happy to do that with you too.
Right, I see. Okay. So and so the rubric will be, in this case, the rubrics will also be put in such a way, and the review process will be in such a way whereby it will be regardless of whichever pathway that you choose, as long as you do well in your individual directions.
Yeah, that's correct. So essentially, what that rubric is designed to do is kind of give you upper and lower balances. So some of the questions are like, how many copies do you plan to store? Well, you know, if you don't have a baseline, do you say 1,000 and hope that that gets you more points or more credibility? The rubric is designed to kind of say, like, once you've hit this limit, this is the min threshold and max threshold, and kind of the mean between those metrics. It won't highlight every specific thing. The goal of having these all public for community review and discussions is that the community helps tease that out. So as you see, and we'll get that rubric, it'll give you more of like, what is the standard deviation between what we're seeing versus like, it needs to have this point in it. And I think once that rubric gets up, it'll make it a lot more clear.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, great question. I appreciate you raising that, Ken. Thank you. I'll do that friendly last call if there was anything left on minds. All right, then. The next call is going to take place at 0200 UTC. That next call will have a live translator. We typically have a few more people attend that call. So if you're keen, you can either check the recording for the conversations that come up. As always, I'll put those questions into Slack. I'm taking away 2 action items. Julian, I will follow up with you and post in the Slack channel as far as what is the next steps for getting office hours and individual support. And Eric, Kenneth, I'm going to follow up more about like, what is that rubric? Where does it stand? And when we're going to see that release? And I'll also post that. If there's anything else I can help get for you guys, please let me know. Otherwise, genuine thank you for coming. Appreciate your time. If there's anything you need, please let me know. Cheers, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Welcome to the December 5th, second Notary Governance call. Happy to announce that we have a translator, as you just heard, who's joining us on this call tonight.
非常欢迎我们今天第2次的会议在12月5号我们今天也会做现场的即时的翻译主要的一些内容都会做这个即时的一个翻译给大家。
So on the schedule tonight, 3 parts. This meeting has not a lot of new information, but it's meant to be a recap of the most critical. First part is we're going to walk through the bug updates. A lot of bugs came through in the last few weeks. Wanted to make sure that everyone was updated on the status. The second is the AC bot live, making sure that everyone is tracking what the AC bot is doing, as well as how to respond to it. Then we're going to spend the bulk giving you updates about the allocator applications, the timelines, and how to apply, as well as give you a chance to ask any questions.
那我们今天的主要的状况我们并没有非常多的新的资讯要给大家，但是呢我们有分3个大部分。第一个部分就是我们对于一些虫这个 bug 的一些状况呢来给大家做一个说明。那第2个部分就是对于我们这个 AC bot 的这个已经这个上线的一个使用的情况那个状况呢也给大家做一个报告。另外就是在一个分配器这个 allocator 的部分呢，我们怎么样在这个分配器这个时刻表什么的来给大家做一个说明。
So as always, this call takes place on the Tuesday. You guys are here now. There's only one more call of the year, and that's taking place on the 19th of December.
那这个是我们今天这个在12月的第一次的会议。那我们最后一个会议就是在12月19号一样是在礼拜2的时间，就是美国时间的礼拜2的时间来进行这个电话会议。
In chat, you guys will find the sign-in sheet. Thank you so much for filling this out. If you came in the morning, feel free to sign it again. If you are on the call and it's been a while, this is a great way to check in, let us know that you're active, that you want to hear from us. And this is a great way to leave comments. So if there's anything on your mind or you wanted to discuss, leave it in here. And this goes right to myself, and I funnel this to the governance team, as well as all your Slacks and DMs. So this link is in chat.
那在这个 chat 里面我们常常利用 chat 来做一个比较有效的沟通。第一个，在这个 chat 里面现在有一个 link， 大家可以利用这个 link 来做sign in啦大家很欢迎大家呢能够sign in之后，让大家能够了解你有来参加这个会议。另外一个很重要的一个部分就是在我们的这个comment 的部分就是你有一些意见的一些表达。那我们在很多的沟通里面，意见的表达呢会常常能够让我们比较及时的能够对你的一些意见 提出来的意见来做一个简单或者是一个有效或者一个重要的一个回应。所以请大家多多利用我们这个意见的回应的部分来做我们进行我们的一些互相的意见的交流。谢谢。
If there's any items you want to see on the next agenda, I'll make a GitHub issue. Feel free to leave a comment and just say, hey, Kevin, I'd love to see, and then let me know you want the agenda, and I'll make sure that it's included. But again, we have one more call of 2023, and these will pick back up. But if there's anything you want to see, this is our time. Feel free to make a comment.
OK， 那所以大家如果说有任何的一些对我们的这个 agenda 这个我们的一些讨论的一些事项，如果有意见的话，那麻烦大家在 comment 的部分尽量提供意见。这个是一个大家把这个贡献大家的一个智力一个把我们的团体里面的一些资讯呢，做得非常有效、非常有用的一个好机会。所以麻烦大家呢多多利用。那尤其是在我们的2023年这个下一次最后一次会议之前大家能够提供意见，让我们今年的2023年的一些会议的一些内容可以做一个完整的一个结束。
No change to the governance team. If you have an issue or need a flag, sometimes it can get hazy on who to reach out to. As always, if you send me a DM or tag me, I'll be happy to help route that to the best point of contact to get you the support you need.
下面这一页呢，就是我们的目前的这个治理团队这个目前呢都没有什么变化但是如果你有任何的问题，当然欢迎你给我一些意见。
All right, program updates. Let's start with bugs. So around October, we found that there was 4 simultaneous bugs that impacted quite a large number of applications. So first off, thanks for flagging them. Second, my apologies. Obviously, bugs are bad, working hard to get those out. So what we did was we compiled all of the bugs in a spreadsheet and worked with 2 teams that were working on the back end to address that. So in the next 2 slides, I'm going to walk you through what the critical causes were for those and make sure that that's been fixed. And then you'll kind of get an update as far as what caused those as we go forward.
那在我们的所有的这些 bug 的部分呢，我们有发现这个有4个同时发生一些 bug 还有它如何来影响我们的一些应用。那非常感谢大家呢能够把这些bug 能够找出来那我们把这些 bug 呢弄出来，这些找出来的这些资讯呢，都把它已经集合在一个 spreadsheet 里面。那我们有安排2个组的人呢，去分别来去处理这些问题。那我们把这些问题呢，会把它的一些造成的原因，还有我们如何把它整个整治好的这些资讯呢，会跟大家共享。
All right. The first issue with data cap not being triggered had to do with addresses. So what the root cause was found is that if you use the same address in multiple applications, it causes the bot to recognize it as a single application. So what they're advising is that we don't use the same address on multiple applications.
那在这个对于这个 data cap 这个没有被触发的这个问题的部分呢，发现原来就是因为呢，我们在用不同的 application 不同的应用程式的时候呢，是用同样一个住址那我们需要在这个大家在处理这个事情的时候呢，不同的应用呢要用不同的一个名字是住址呢，才不会去触发这样的一个问题。
The second that was causing it is there are 2 backends that are running that registry and the bot. One is managed by one team and one is managed by another. There was an error in the API call. So what they've gone is they've gone through and they've triaged where that bug API problem was. They've addressed it. So anywhere that you've seen that an application hadn't triggered, they would leave a comment. Like this screenshot that I have, the engineer left a comment that this was the DMOB API didn't trigger. So they've closed out this issue. If you're still having a problem, please let me know and I'll follow up with those engineers.
在2个后端的这个问题产生在 API call 的这个问题呢发现是在 API 的部分是产生一些问题。那这个问题的处理方式呢，我们在我们的 comment 的部分呢已经把它这个做出来了，大家可以看这个 comment 的部分。那这就是我们会处理的方式。那也诚如这个现在这个 screenshot 这个荧幕上所展现这个部分呢，就是我们这个处理之后在这个里面的资讯会是用这种方式来展现。
The second update is the AC bot. This went live last week, and what this is going to do is it's going to review all of the applications to ensure compliance. The way that compliance is measured is these multiple thresholds that will gauge these criteria for being within bounds of compliance. So these thresholds were talked about in the past few governance calls by Phil. They're now live.
那这个在 Phil 在上一次所提到的这个对于 AC bot 的一个问题呢，尤其是在上个礼拜我们看到这个部分AC bot 的一个部分呢，就是因为它这个它的应用部分呢，我们在检查我们所有的一些阀值那个 threshold， 还有呢它的一些这个对于这个 compliance 有没有合乎规则的这些部分那看看有没有到达某一些阀值来检测这些东西。那这些部分呢，就是有这样的一个状况，所以我们就是主要这 AC bot 本身的设立就是希望能够利用这些比较自动的设定的一些阀值来做一些检测，来做一些比较有用的一些对大家更有增加效率的一些方式。
Two points that you should be aware of. One is that if an application fails the thresholds, it will result in an automatic creation of an issue to remove that data cap. Two, as this AC bot rolls out, the way it was designed is that it gets more strict as time progresses. So in the first 2 weeks, for example, CID checker only has to retrieve off 25%. But when this bot is fully running for a few weeks, probably by the end of January, February, it will be a much more strict requirement that goes through. The way that this was designed was to give applications, storage providers, notaries, everybody involved in this process to kind of get familiar with it and modify to make sure that they're ready and able and working within this.
那所以在我们这个应用上来讲呢，如果我们这个auto 这个等于 AC bot 如果说失败的话，它会自动来建立一个 data cap 的 issue 那这是一个第一点。那另外就是在时间的拉长之中呢，我们目前设立一个25%的一个方式来做一个等于一个检测或是一个使用这个是一个在一个 live 的应用上。那目前呢这个应用是以 25% 的方式呢在运作中。那我们期望在1月底或2月底的时候呢，我们这个整个的应用程式呢会变得更精准，而且更严格那这样的话呢，这个在这个过程之中，也顺便就是让大家能够对这个 AC bot 的这个整个程式的一个运作呢，有一个更深一步的一个了解。
In the application issue 986, the AC bot will list all of the applications that it's checking. So you can see in this screenshot here, it'll review each application, see if it's open or closed, and if it is still open, the AC bot will leave a comment in that application on the status or issue that it retrieved.
在 application issue 这个部分来讲，我们的 AC bot 呢，它会将所有的它所检测的所有的应用的都把它列出来，然后会看看这些这个问题呢本身它有没有 open。如果是 open 的话呢，它是一个开放性的一个问题的话呢，那就会在这个部分这个应用的部分就会留下一些它的一些 comment 这个一些它的一些注解。
This is what it will look like when the AC bot leaves a comment in the issue. It'll essentially post his aggregation and compliance bot. It's all automated. And it will tell you in the application what criteria was not met for the compliance of the application and data cap allowance. So in this case, it would be the data cap stored with top provider didn't meet the threshold, and it will leave you a comment. This gives you a chance to either leave another comment or address what issue came up.
所以在 AC bot 这个例如这个我们现在这个例子里面呢，它基本上就是把我们这个问题遇到的状况呢，把它表列出来。 那它会表列出来的方式呢，它会把它的一些要求有没有达到某些要求，那它的阀值是什么？像这个例子来讲呢，就是因为它在 data cap 还有它的整个这个 issue 本身的使用的百分比呢，它没有满足这个低于75%的threshold 75%的这个值，所以呢，它就在后面就把这个原因把它注释出来。所以这就是我们在 ACPUB 在运作的时候呢，我们都会对于任何所遇到的问题呢，采取这样的一个表列式的方式，把这些问题的这个要求的标准发生的原因，还有呢处理的一些方式都把它表列出来，让大家可以一目了然。
So I'll pause and see if anybody has any questions about the recent bugs or anything having to do with allocators.
那我们现在先暂停，来看看大家对于刚才所讨论的一些这个bug 的问题有没有什么意见？There is a question related to Mifu is saying that 很高兴看到有这个 ACPUB。那请问when will be the LDN be used?
It should be live on the LDNs now. So you should start to see that AC bot run on the LDNs.
我们现在 LDN 应该现在已经上线了所以你应该可以看得到才对。
All right. Next topic is the allocator open period.
那我们现在这个下面的部分就讨论这个 allocator 这个分配器。
To apply to become an allocator is very similar to apply to become a notary. What you do is you come into GitHub and create a new application. The link to GitHub is here in the links in this slide deck. Slide deck is in Slack. Once you open that application in GitHub, you'll see that there are 3 sections, and we'll talk about those 3. You'll then fill out a Google form with all of the questions having to do with your organization and how you store data, what your plans are, how you will do all the compliance, and then you'll submit it via Airtable.
那在我们这个 allocate 这个申请本身呢，跟我们的申请做 notary 的公证人这个流程呢是非常相似的。那当你打开的时候，它会有一个3个这个等于是说部分呢有一些资讯要你去填那它会有一个 Google Doc 麻烦呢就是把这个 Google Doc 打开以后呢，把你这个组织的一些它要求的一些资讯把它填进去这样的话就可以开始这个准备这样的一个申请。
This is what the application looks like when you open it up inside of GitHub. You'll see that there are 3 parts. Part number 1 is you will list these 7 questions in the application that you start. So essentially like your name, your organization, what team you've been on-chain address for your allocator, just the very basics. Then you'll see the second part is a Google Doc. When you open that Google Doc, there will be around 50 or 60 questions that have everything that we need to collect from you. The third part is you take those Google Doc, all the answers that you filled out, and you submit it via Airtable. The reason why we're having you do the Google Doc and not just go straight to Airtable is because Airtable won't save. So if you work all the way up to question 30 and close your browser, you'll lose everything. So that's why you'll see the Google Doc, and that's why you'll submit in Airtable.
那在我们这个现在当你点进那个 link 进去就是说申请的时候呢，就看到这申请表上有3个大部分你需要去把它填。第一个部分就是把你这个组织的一些细部的资料，有分7个部分呢，大家要把它这个资讯的依据它所要求的东西把它填进去。然后另外呢就是把这个所有的这个在 第二个部分呢，就是在这个Allocator 的这个 application 的部分呢，你要把大概50到60个问题呢，必须你要把它 download 下来，然后呢，把你的答案呢，把它 save 下来啊。那第三个就是 save 在一个 Google Doc 里面。第三个部分就是把这个 Google Doc 本身呢，要把它这个准备从这个 error 这个 table 呢，把它记上去。那当你填完之后，你如果没有 save 下来，荧幕上所填的东西，它本身是不会 save 的，所以你必须要 download 这个 Google Doc 本身，然后把它自己把它留下来，到最后才去把它送上去，这样才能够保证你的资讯呢没有流失掉。
I will say that this application for allocators in the 5th round is substantially more in depth than the 4th or the 3rd or the 2nd. And the reason for that is you notaries may remember we would fill out an application, then you and I would have a lot of back and forth asking for compliance, asking for sanctions, asking for ledger information. The goal is that we collect everything all at once to minimize the headache for the back and forth. Also, because the allocators are receiving large amounts of data cap to then disperse and allocate, it needs to have a very clear plan on how they intend to allocate while remaining within compliance. So that's why this application has so many questions on it. I will pre-apologize because it's a lot of information to provide. It's time consuming, but ideally this is a one-time setup for you. And then once that plan is written, you're good to go.
所以我先跟大家说明一下，说在这个在这申请的步骤里面呢，一开始这个可能是工欲善其事，必先利其器我们有很多的详细的资料必须要先收集。那收集完之后呢，大家会觉得说我们现在这个5比前面的2、3、4所收集的资讯要详细很多。那这个主要的目的就是说，因为呢，我们之前在处理这个事情的时候呢，会需要有太多的互动，这个甲问乙，乙问甲，回答之后再澄清再回答，互动太多了。那虽然这样的话呢，这个永远没办法把它结案。所以呢，我们要把这个部分做一个非常大的改变。那这个改变的开始就是把我们的基本资料呢，一开始的时候我们把它详细先收集好。那重要的就是说，这个 Allocator 以后呢，有很多的东西需要去做分配那这个分配它的量太大了。那所以呢Allocator 在收集好这些资料之后呢，它可以做一个比较详细的一个策略性的一个计划，来看看是怎么样能够把这个分配呢做个有效率，而且是一个很正确的一个分配。所以先跟大家做一个说明，说这是为什么我们这次在收集资讯的时候的表格呢会列得这么详细。所以请大家务必要详细的把这个填好，这样可以降低我们的一些互动的一些负担，那大家可以比较迅速的把这个事情完成。
Timelines are very important. The deadline to submit your allocator application is January 20th. But I recommend you don't wait until the last minute to submit, and here's why. There will be feedback that's provided. There's a scoring rubric that's coming, and if you wait until the 20th or the very last days to submit, it won't allow you any time for input or revisions, which means whatever you submit will be the final. If you turn it in anytime now in that date, what I'll be doing is taking that Airtable form, removing any information that's personal, like your email address, your contact info, and only posting your diligence plans back to Airtable. This gives you a chance to kind of look at the score, see where you stand on the rubric, and provide any information to increase your score to ensure you're selected.
在我们这个Allocator 这个 timeline 来说这个时刻表来讲呢虽然我们定是1月20号是我们的 deadline 这个限期是1月20号，但是我鼓励大家呢在这个之前就一定要先做一些把你的资讯先拿出来因为呢第一个就是说当你如果可以早点把资料拿出来的时候呢我们可以给你一些我们的一些意见。那这些意见呢可以把它拿来当将来能够增加你这个得分的分数的一个高低的一个机会那如果说你没有这种修正的机会或者是互动的机会的话呢，时间拉得太近，那 变成是说你没有这种互动的话，那你最后所交出来的东西大概就是那样，有错误啦，或是有需要修正的，也来不及改变了。那或许因为这样，你的分数会比较低。那另外就是说，你如果早点把资料给我我们可以把这些资料来做一个整合，还有把它做一个修整的话呢，我们可以把你的一些个资从你的这个资讯里面把它拿掉，让你留下的部分是比较清楚，而且对于有效的一些这个得分的一部分呢，能够得到更多的分数。所以呢，我们是希望你能够越早把这个事情完成呢，对你是越有利的。
The end of December and the first week of January are big holidays in the States, so there won't be a lot of communication from the governance team, or you might see comms really die down. So be mindful that if you submit probably from December 23rd to January 5th or 6th, you might not see a lot of activity on your application. Also, in this round, it's different from the previous, and that if you are not selected, or if you don't apply, what the focus goal is in Q2 of this year to open this up so it's ongoing. So rather than having an election that's determined by dates, if somebody decides to become an allocator, they don't have to wait for a date range. They can just apply. We don't have a timeline. We're shooting for Q2, but if for any reason the application isn't selected, you can reapply once that goes live in Q2.
那我跟大家要另外提醒一下说，这个12月的结束还有呢1月的开始比如说12月23号开始到1月的5号6号呢，在美国呢是一个很大的节日。那因为这一段节日大家很多人都会放假或是去旅游，那会不在，所以大家会注意到在我们的整个的互动上呢你所提出的这个东西，还有我们的我们的这个社区里面的一些活动本身呢会比较静态会没有什么互动的机会，所以这个大家也不要惊慌，这只是因为呢很多人都因为不在的关系。那另外就是说，如果呢在这个申请之中，你如果没有被选上的话或是说你没有提出申请的话，那我们预计在明年的第2季Q2 呢，我们大概会把这个申请的这个窗口呢打开。那所以呢，你如果说没有在这个时间内呢已经申请，那你可以等到下一个窗口打开的时候呢整个是还是可以提出申请。那一打开的时候，你的申请案呢就会可以拿进来可以去处理所以如果这一次的申请你没有被选上，或是说你没有办法提出申请，那你也不要着急，你就把你的资料准备好，到这个一样是提出来。那我们在 Q2 在这个能够在把这个窗口在打开的时候呢大概那个时候我们就可以再重新来做一个申请的一些审核之类的让大家能够有机会参与。所以大家不要惊慌，但是在这个时候如果能够赶快积极的来进行的话，当然是越早能够完成是越好。
I posted these questions on the last call. I'd like to just reiterate because some of these questions have come in again. The highlights. If you were a notary in the past round, yes, you will need to reapply in order to receive fresh data cap allocations to distribute. If you receive an initial score on your application, yes, you could resubmit, edit, and update, provided you get it in time to receive that input. Third, if there is information that's missing in your application that will reflect your score, we will leave a comment in the application in GitHub for you to be aware of that. And fourth, if you have any questions while you're filling that out, feel free to tag me in your application and I'll respond there, or you can feel free to shoot me a message on Slack and I can help you there.
那在下面这个对于上一次有提到这个分配器的一些问题的部分，我把它表列在这个地方例如说像第一个呢就是说如果你没有被选上这个当作公证人在之前那你是不是会自动的被加上在这个第五次的一个选择呢但是我这个回应就是说所有的这些公证人还有这个allocator 的部分呢都是需要再重新申请才能够收到这个 data cap 的这个申请这个是要重新再申请。那其他的部分也类似，就是说依据这下面的部分呢，如果说在这个你能够在这个第二个部分，就是说例如说你的之前的分数那个 比较低的话这个刚开始有个分数那你可不可以把这个比较低的或是不满意的分数再做一个提高那这样我们在12月30号之前所收到任何的资讯本身呢，我们都会这个来看看你的资讯以后呢，那如果你有一些其他的资讯呢，在1月20号之前这个我们这个说明一下，就是说在那个之前你可以提供多余的资讯，也许可以在这个分数的部分在审核的时候可以有增加的部分那如果说在申请的时候有一些比较其他的资讯呢有什么其他的困难在第3点的部分那这样的话呢你要必须我们是鼓励大家能够在GitHub 里面呢去把这些资讯呢看看什么需要多余的资讯需要提供那如果说你有一些问题呢，在填这些资料的时候呢，那这个东西我们麻烦你一定要用 comment 的部分呢来提出来，因为这是我们是大家做一个很公平、很透明的方式来做一个运作。
Two questions that came up on the morning call. Question number 1, will there be office hours to ask very specific questions or get help with an application? Answer, yes. What we're going to do is probably make some sort of a sign-up sheet, find out where in the world you are, and then what type of questions you have. The reason for that, you might have a very technical question or a question related to KYC, which might be relevant for me to bring in somebody else like Simon or Phil or KZ that could speak to those. So we'll push that out probably later this week so you can get that targeted help if you need it. The second question that came from the morning call is, when will the scoring rubric be released? I've been following up with the members of the team working on that. We should probably get that to you later this week. For this round, the scoring rubric serves more as like a check-in. There's not benchmarks, but it's more for you to look at your application, then look at the rubric, and then it will tell you, do you have a strong application or are you lacking in some areas to come and strengthen it?
那在我们今天早上的另外一个会议里面有提出2个问题第一个问题呢，就是对于我们的一个 office hour 这个办公时间的一个设立这样可以大家做一个讨论。那所以我们的回答是说会的，我们会依据会提供一个 sign up 的一个 sheet， 就是大家一个签到表大家签一签，看看你是在世界上的什么地方不同的时区、不同的地点，那然后看看你的这个有一些哪些问题呢，在这个填这些资料的时候可以顺便把它提好。这样的话呢，我们可以依据时区，我们可以依据你的这个提出的问题的内容来做一个适当的分配。如果我们有需要找其他的资源的人进来处理你提出的问题的话，那我们在这个时间就有机会可以准备好。那在这个office hour 的时间可以拿来做一个有效的讨论。所以这是针对于我们每一个人的一个需要，能够给大家做一个最大的一个帮忙。那我们大概是这个礼拜的后期我们大概就会这个事情就会开始进行。另外呢我们有提到的是说这个分数的部分呢什么时候会把它这个展现出来拿出来，那也是大概在这个礼拜的后面的时间比较晚一点的时间呢，我们会把这个资讯这个分数这个公布出来。但这个公布的分数本身，给大家提醒一下，这个部分本身是给大家做一个检测用而已它不是一个最终的一个分数。那这里面呢，就会让大家能够了解说，在你的应用在你的做的事情里面有一些分数的一个高低的情况是怎么样，哪些地方是你的强项，哪些地方是你的弱项，让你有些机会来做一个修理，或是这个是把它加强给大家做一个参考。
So with that, I'll pause and see if there's any questions that I could answer. I'll jump right into chat, and it says there are no restrictions on the rule design of my own pathway. So Joss, I think maybe the best way to say this is there are 3 different types of allocators coming up in this next round. Are you automated? So take a look at that. As far as the rule design, what they're looking for is that there is a clear diligence and bookkeeping plan. So if you say in your application that data cap will be distributed by certain requirements, the intent is that that application will be held to those standards. So if you want to take a look at the few, we'll be posting their comments in Airtable shortly. And the rubric will also help as you start to look at that. So as far as restrictions, it's more along the fact of, can you maintain the diligence and bookkeeping plan that you outline?
那我们在这个里面，这个 chat 这个 comment 的部分有提到说，是不是在我们的这个我自己设计的这个部分里面有没有任何的一个限制哈？那这个我们在这个规则里面呢，就是说会利用你所做的规划本身呢，来看看你是不是能够依据你所有的资讯还有你的情况呢，看看你有办法来保持maintain。这个整个的一个运作的方式，那所以是有点比较属于机动性的所以要变成是说这个你的部分能够多做什么它就自然就会配合你所需求的，还有你的能力所及的，能够来让这个事情能够比较这个依个人的情况来做一个最好的分配。
Good question. I'll pause and see if there was anything else. Please, the floor is yours.
问的问题很好我们现在再停一下，来看看大家还有没有什么其他的意见可以提出来。有人举手 ，Someone raised a hand.
Thank you. Young, I see your hand. Floor is yours.
Yes, about the allocator, I think the process is very complicated, so we are still figuring out the details. So actually, I got a lot of questions about this Airtable. First, in this Airtable, a lot of questions mentioned the tooling like a KYC provider and also the in the tooling like a KYC provider and also some tools to help to do the due diligence. So I'm just wondering are there any tooling available to choose from?
Yes. June, do you want to say the question, then I'll answer it?
OK， 所以这个一样的问题呢，就是在这个Allocator 里面的一些百分比的部分呢，看起来呢，那个 percentage 的部分呢，看起来相当的复杂那尤其在这个表格里面呢，它有很多的一些问题，尤其在这个工具的使用上，在 tooling 的部分呢，看看是不是有一些工具可以让我们能够协助我们来把这些工具的部分呢，要选择的时候呢，也有比较容易选的一个方式这是我提出来的问题。
Great question about the tooling. So here's why you see a lot of tooling questions. One of the allocator methodologies is an automatic, kind of like how we have it now. If somebody wants a small amount of data cap, like 32 gigs, they can get that for their storage and their testing and their script writing. For KYC, if you have a program that you would like to use with clients already, you could list that. I know that Filecoin Plus and the foundation had done some work bringing on a third-party tooling that does KYC. I'll follow up with Kevin Z, on the call and see if he can get the links to those KYC. But if you have questions about how other people have answered that or what we're looking for in that, I'll find that rubric and that might really help answer that for you as far as what a good application would list.
OK， 那在这里边呢，我们有很多的 tooling 那这个的设计是因为呢，我们这个本身的设计是希望能够让它比较能够自动化比较能够 快速的来回应所有的一些需求，例如在一个比较小的一些应用上那这些工具本身就可以拿来比较快速的一些回应因为比较复杂的工具拿来，它就比较能够面对于比较多面向的一些情况来做一个处理。那对于这个像 KYC 的这个 list 本身呢，我记得在 Filecoin 的 Foundation 里面呢，他们呢已经有一些其他的一些安排还有一些处理方式。那这个我会跟那个 KZ 呢能够再往下问一下 KZ， 看看他那个部分所做处理的部分有没有一个 link。那如果有这个 link 的话呢，我会把这个 link 呢找出来，然后再分享给你。
Okay, great. And I have one more question about the question number 43, 44, like monetization. So if my allocator pathway doesn't involve monetization, so how to fill out these blanks about this part?
那我下面这个问题是关于这个第43跟44的问题本身这个在这个表格的一个在这个里面的填的资料里面呢有些地方呢它不是说很清楚的能够列出来，那这个东西本身呢是不是要能够有怎么样的方式可以能够把它填得比较清楚一点。
Great question. So if I'm hearing you correctly, it's in the Allocator application, there are questions about monetization that do not apply to how you plan to structure. If that comes up in that question or others, the best way to answer that would be to leave a comment like, I don't plan to monetize, this will not apply.
那在这个 Allocator 的设计里面呢，有个部分就是说，你对于这个东西要把它精简化 monetize 这个部分呢，如果说有出现一些问题的时候，那最好的方法就是在你的这个 comment 的部分这个回应的部分呢，直接点明说我并没有这个要去做 monetizing 的这个动作的意图这样的话呢，就可以比较清楚一点。
So if these answers are blank, so that will that affect the scores?
那如果说这个部分我没有去留下 comment 把它留的空白的话呢，会不会影响分数？
No, it's not like a test where you have to fill out every single question. If a question does not apply or it's not very specific to how you're structured, just put as the answer like, I don't plan to monetize or I don't plan to use KYC. If that comes back and they're looking at your application, scoring it, and it's not very strong as a result, they'll follow up in the comments and say, hey, Store Swift, we see you don't have a KYC or whatever it is that you don't fill out. And that will be a chance to either have that discussion on a way to help strengthen it in other areas. But no, not every question may specifically apply to how you want. And just list, this will not apply.
那我们在填这些资料的时候呢，这并不是一个考试，然后呢，你必须去回答所有的问题，这个并不是那个形式如果你对于你这个部分本身尽你所能够来做任何的一个回答都可以。如果没有办法回答或是没有答案，你就把它留空白，这个不会影响你的分数。但是呢，如果说我们在审核这些资讯的时候，发现说有些空白是需要你来提供一些意见，但是你没有提供，那这个情况下呢，我们就会主动的来跟你怎么保持联系，来了解这个情况呢。那这样我们就一个对我们说造成一个大家可以讨论的机会。那这样的话就可以把这些事项呢比较能够把它明朗化，所以这个部分就是让大家能够理解说这个都是一个对话的一个机会让大家呢不要觉得说是一个很必须的。那所以呢，你如果说这个部分并不适用，你就可以写说这个部分并不适用我的情况，或是说最直接的回应说我没有计划要做某一方面的事情，这样。
Great questions. I'll pause and see if there was any others.
这些问题都很好我停一下，看看还有没有什么其他的问题。
So I got one more question, Kevin.
Yes.
So will you choose some pathways from those applications, and how many of them will be choose as the final pathways in the end?
Yeah. Jun?
Yes，请问一下，说我们这个在这个 pathway 里面有多少个应用呢会被选出来？那这个请给我一个了解，说这个我们这个选择这个应用的时候呢，会有几个会被可以选的？
So in past elections, there was a fixed number of notaries selected for geographic regions. The reason for this was to ensure that data cap and storage was distributed not just in one geographic area, but multiple. Another benefit of having a limited number tied to regions was that we were able to select the strongest applications without having to spend time on folks that might not know what they're doing or know where the program is going. With this allocator, it is not meant to have a fixed number. So I don't have like a total on what they're looking for, but in the last elections, there was a firm fixed proposal. Like there was 13 selected by one region, 6 for another, 5 for another. That's not the case this time. If there is a strong application, if they have a very clear bookkeeping and diligence plan, that's what they're looking for to have it move forward.
对这个部分的选择来说呢，我们这一次的选择跟之前的并不一样，因为之前做的时候呢，他们是要确定呢有很多不同的地点，还有呢有很多这个不同的一个选项他们就固定了说要选出多少个人多少个这个有一个数量但是我们这次我们这个分配器这 allocator 部分呢，我们并没有规划说一定要有一个固定的一个数量。我们的目的呢是由选择由这个大家能够有最强的最好的一些应用的人的一个申请的人的话呢我们都可以很乐意能够来把它容纳进来。所以呢我们并没有一个上限所以不像上一次我们只有大概有13个的一个数量限制，但是我们这一次呢并没有这样的一个规划，所以就是能够有做得最好让我们了解到说你能够处理得很好，一切的安排能够很顺畅是一个规划很好的一个组织的话呢，那这样的话我们应该都没有什么问题的。
Great question. I'll pause and see if there's any final before we end the call.
好问题我们再停一下，看看大家还有没有想到什么问题要问。
All right. Well, if anything comes up, feel free to tag me in Slack or post in the Phil Plus channel. We'll be able to route you to get you what you need. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you for the translations. Very helpful, very appreciated. You have a wonderful night, and thank you again for your time.
谢谢大家今天晚上的参与大家在亚洲当然是一个日安在美国那边我们是一个晚安非常感谢大家，如果有任何的问题麻烦在 comment 的部分那个 chat 的部分呢直接这个寄给我，那我会很快的给大家一个回应谢谢大家今天的参与，祝大家这个有一个美好的一天。
All right. Thank you, everyone. Cheers.